All right, we are recording for how to cut out a subject to white and then overlay a second photo on it, like a double exposure look. Lisa says hi. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Hey, Travis. Good morning. Hi, Beast. She's really passionate about Photoshop, so. All right, here we go. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to open up my Photoshop, or pretty much my background photo. So, I'm actually using her as the background pretty much in this photo. So one thing is I need to copy my layer. So I can press Control J, or I can go layer and then duplicate layer. Same as Photo P, same process for that. And then, as I showed yesterday, I can use a quick selection tool. I could use my select subject. It's going to have a hard time because there's really busy stuff behind my subject, but we can try it. Let's see what it does. So I'm going to click select subject. Did pretty good. Let's zoom in. So because we have the quick selection tool, sorry, she's barking at the neighbors. We can add to the selection or subtract from selection. It's the same as Photo P. We can keep, modifying the selection. So I'm just going to kind of keep adding to it a little bit. And then if I hold Alt or Option and give a little minus key, or I can click minus here and then take away from the selection if it kind of did too much. Like here, I grab this pulse. I'm just going to take this off the selection. All right, so it actually did a really good job figuring out what our subject was. It is going to cut off all these little stems, the kind of bamboo stems here, but that's okay for this process. I don't want to waste a bunch of time. So what I want to do is put her on a layer mask. So I'm just going to go here where it says add layer mask, a little Japanese flag thing. So the second I click on that, it basically put black around my selection and then white in my selections. Right now, because I copied the layer, it's basically still showing layer underneath. So what I'm going to do is click on the layer below, and I'm going to go to edit and then fill it in with white, right? So I'm just going to fill in. So we could do, a color pattern, 50% gray, white, or black, right? So I'm going to do white and then hit OK. So as you can see, it basically just filled in the layer underneath to white. And so then I got my masked out subject here, right? So what I can do, if you have Photoshop, Photo P has the Refine Edge tool, which is similar. So what I can do is go to my quick selection tool, go to select and mask, and then we can see how it does. It might still have a hard time with all that busy stuff behind her. Let's see if it grabs some of these edges better. So sometimes I just test it out. Yeah, it's kind of struggling. It's kind of getting fuzzy and weird. I'm just going to cancel. Again, the problem with that photo is it has such a busy background with all the trees and everything around my subject, right? All this stuff happening around, super, super busy. If I had shot her, I didn't shoot this photo, but I'm saying if I shot my subject against a white background, it'd be really easy to select her. So the more you can kind of shoot your subjects against solid, clean backgrounds, as I mentioned before, makes it a lot easier to select your subject in Photoshop. If it's on a busy background, you're gonna have a hard time. So what I can do though is use my paintbrush just like in Photo P2 and set it to white will show and black won't show. So I'm just gonna modify my brush. I can change the size, hardness of the edge. So I'm actually gonna make it a harder edge because she's sharpened in focus. If I had a like out of focus subject or like a soft edge, then I would use a softer hardness on the edge. And so what I can do is paint in or off. So black, if I switch it to black, we'll paint off. Oops, sorry. Make sure you're on your layer mask when you're painting. So there we go. I have my layer mask selected. And then I'm going to switch this to black. If you want to switch back and forth, just press the letter X on the keyboard and it'll switch between black and white easier. So I'm just going to go to black and then paint off any stuff it missed. Got some weird stuff happening here and here. And so what I can also do is if I click and hold down Shift, it'll go in that straight line. So if I keep holding down Shift and clicking ahead, I can kind of smooth up my selection. Or I can go back into my quick selection tool, go to select a mask, and then maybe it has a hard time refining the edge with the refine edge brush tool, but I can do my global refinements here. So if I go down here to where it says global refinements, let's see, let's go to kind of where it's getting kind of chunky here. So if I click the smooth, what it's going to do is it's going to kind of smooth out any kinks, right? So you can kind of see what it did there. Shift edge, I can cut into my selection. So the further I drag it in, more kind of cuts in. So it depends on how it selected it. This one did a pretty good job. Contrast is if you want a really hard, sharp edge, or right, you can kind of see how it gets sharper the more I add contrast. That's too sharp, it looks kind of like JPEG'd out. If I wanted to soften the edge, I could feather it. And oops, that's too much. Let's do like a little bit, and it makes it like a softer edge. So you do have those global. I am just going to do the smooth a teeny bit and shift the edge in a little bit. And then hit OK. So you can see, I'm just going to zoom in so you can see this edge better. This was before. I got kind of this weird chunky stuff happening, and after it kind of smoothed those chunks out. So pretty cool. So I'm going to crop this photo just because we got a ton of negative space around my subject. So I'm just going to go to my crop tool, and then let's kind of line up her eyes on the rule of third, and then center out the spacing on my subject. Once I'm happy, I can hit the check or hit return, and I'll crop it. So now what I want to do is, I got the subject the way I want, or actually she's technically the background, is I want to bring that second photo in and overlay it with my photo. So I got this cool, photo of a downtown, Asia city. So I'm just going to go get my move tool on the upper left. I'm going to click on the tab. So I got my two tabs of my images on the top, same as Photopea. And then I'm just going to click and drag it off so it snaps off the tab. So if I was like taking off like a tab on a web browser, same thing. I'm going to use my move tool. I'm going to click, hold the click, drag it over to my other photo, like so. So now you can see on my photo, I got my white layer, my subject layer with the mask, and then my city photo. So very important tool is our free transform tool. So if I want to size it, I can go to edit, free transform. I get the boxes. So again, I can size it. I can go to the edge and rotate it. I can control click on the inside and flip it horizontally if I wanted to, and rotate it different ways. So totally up to you, but it is a useful tool, especially if you want to size your subject down. Free transform tool, it is in Photopea. That's the way to do it. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm just going to check the opacity and just take my top layer's opacity down so I can kind of see through it a little bit. So let's see kind of what we want to line up on her. There we go. That's looking kind of cool. Where like the sign's not cutting off her neck. And then let's maybe move. There we go. That's better. So it just kind of helps you place it. And then if I want to free transform it, I can still go edit free transform and keep adjusting that with the lower opacity. So then I can kind of figure out, okay, I'm getting these lights not on her face, and double click. So obviously we want to either attach this layer. So I can kind of show you a couple methods. So if I attach a layer like we did with our adjustment layers yesterday, if I hold Alt or Option, go between the two, I get this box with a little arrow pointing down. If I click, it's going to do a solid layer, right? Because it's no blending mode on this. It's just standard normal mode, right? So what if we could bring the opacity down to kind of see through it a little bit, which is up to you. Or what I can do is change the blending mode. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here just so you can see it better. So let's try multiply. Multiply again is a very dark blending mode, so that's not working. Let's try screen. Screen is a lighter blending mode, so it kind of lets the light stuff through that layer. And then we have overlay, which deals with contrast, and soft light, which is a softer version. hard light is a much harder, intense version. You can always still, with the blending mode, bring the opacity down. So if it's too much, you can always, bring it down to whatever you think looks best. So what I'm actually going to do, I liked how the screen one looked. That was kind of cool. I'm going to bring the opacity down a little bit, just so it's not as intense. There we go. And so let's say I didn't like, having, I'm going to zoom in here. One sec. Oh, sorry, I'm on opacity. Just going to zoom in, Control plus. Maybe I don't want to have the spalding on her neck, right? That's not looking super good. So what I can do is add a layer mask to that layer. So my blended layer is here. That's selected. I'm going to click here on my layer mask. I'm going to get a brush, set it to black. I'm going to make sure it's a soft brush. And I'm going to bring the flow down on the brush so it's a low percent. And what I'm going to do is just kind of gently, 12%, start painting off with my layer mask that Spalding logo, right? And maybe this kind of hard edge here. And so because I'm working with a soft edge brush at 12%, I can do it very gently. I can take off some of the stuff off her face here, all those kind of lines from the buildings. Right. So I would spend more time doing this, but you kind of get the idea. And so now I got a much cleaner face on her than I did before. And so you can, I'll just show it again. I could, attach, if I click on my layer, adjustment layers to it. So maybe I want to, change the colors a bit on her, maybe, warm her up a bit, add some magentas, a little bit of red. Kind of gives a little bit more color to that. So this is before and after. So again, because it's attached to my subject layer, it'll affect it. If I was working in Photopea or Photoshop Mix, as I said before, what I would do is basically adjust her layer and then cut her out and then drop my photo in. I would edit her photo first, get it the way I want her to look, then bring in the second photo, right? Because I can't really attach those adjustment layers just to my subject layer in Photopea. So that's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do is, if I wanted to keep working, I would just go File, Save As. And then make sure it is, I'll call this, V2. Actually, let's call it V4 because I know that's not used. Make sure it's Photoshop format, .psd. Make sure my layers are checked. Hit Save. So this way I can close out. So let's say I did some today and want to work on it tomorrow. If I save it in that PSD format, like so, this is it, our PSD, I can open it back up either into Photopea or Photoshop, and it has my layers. So then all I want to do, if I want to keep adjusting my layer mask, I'll click on my layer mask, and then I could keep, with a brush, I could keep cutting. Let's go back to my flow 100%. Let's do a hard edge. Right, I can take off things, or if I switch it to white, I can paint stuff back, right, and keep working on my mask. I could go to my quick selection tool, do my select a mask, or I could refine the edge, or I can add or minus and subtract. So lots of things I could keep doing. I could keep adding adjustment layers. Maybe I want her to be a bit brighter. I'm just gonna undo those brushes. There we go. So I'm just gonna click right on her layer. Let's go and add a levels adjustment. And then I'm just going to bring up my highlights a little bit on her. There we go. That's looking better. Let's kind of play with the mids. There we go. So then I would just save it again. So always save your PSD when you get happy, you like how it looks. And then the last thing you want to do before you upload it to Flickr or to your Google Doc is go layer, all the way to the bottom, flatten image. It'll combine all your layers together. And then it lets you actually go save as a JPEG. So I can switch the format to a JPEG. So JPEG, hit save. Let's do 12 quality. Oh, so then I'd have my PSD, which is a much bigger file, but then I have my finished JPEG. And this is what I would upload, when I turn it in for the project. So just kind of wanted to show how to cut out to white. I will show you in Photopea. It is a little more clunkier process. What I would recommend doing first is when you open your subject layer, is adjust your subject layer first. So it's this photo here. So, I would do my image adjustments first. So maybe I want to make her brighter. So I'm just going to bring up, my exposure a bit. I'm really just focused on her, how she's looking. How I want her to look first. I don't really care about the rest because I'm going to cut her out anyway, right? So do those adjustments first. So image adjustments, we can add saturation, color balance, right? If we wanted to go into our midtones, add some red maybe. So green and magenta, so a little magenta, and blue or yellow. So I'm going to add some yellow. So just kind of warming her up and then brightening her up before I, start selecting her and cutting her out. So again, what I would do is layer, duplicate layer. And then, we could do a quick selection or object selection, or we could literally just add a mask. If it does a hard time selecting her, let's just add a layer mask. Get a brush. This is the always foolproof way. Set it to black. I'm just going to make my brush bigger in size. Don't want 100% hardness. Nothing's ever that super sharp. Maybe, high 80s is good. And then wherever I paint with black, so let's fill in the layer below first so we can kind of see. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. And let's do white and hit OK. So it's going to fill that in. So now we can kind of see where, and let's go back to the right layer. So I'm going to go back to my layer mask and then painting with black. So wherever I paint with black, I'm just going to zoom out, make my brush bigger. I'm just going to paint off all the area around her, right? Obviously, it'd take more time if I was doing this for myself, but you kind of get the idea. So you can kind of see where I'm painting here on the layer mask. Then just zoom in, press Control+ to zoom in. You can use those brackets next to the letter P to make your brush smaller on the go. And then you can start, doing more fine tuning, painting off. And so when you're doing compositing, you're really going to zoom in and then really make your brush small and really start, fine tune painting. And so that's the most accurate way. It's the slowest way, but it is the most accurate. So you could try using the quick selection tool. So let's just go back a step. I'm just going to trash this layer mask. And let's do the quick selection tool. The one with Photopea does not work well. I'll just be honest with you. So if I start selecting, he's having like a hard time already with these like bamboo sticks. But I can keep clicking around and see how well it does. But I notice it just kind of starts selecting, oh no, it's doing okay. It's grabbing most of her. But then if I added a layer mask here, it would basically cut her out. Obviously missed it. But, it's a good starting point. And so then I can just go to my brush, right? And then just keep painting with my brush, right? So as long as I'm on my layer mask, so my layer mask is selected, I can just start it with a decent selection. And then, if it took off something, just switch that to white. So just switch it to white here. And then you can always paint stuff back. And so white shows on a layer mask, black doesn't show. So, it took off this chunk here. I would paint that back. So, cool. And then in Photopea, same thing. I'm just going to open that other layer real quick. What image was that? DMAS 16. There we go. I think it's this one. Cool. Oh, actually, so yeah, this one you have to do a little different. So go File, Open in Place. That's the option you want for your other layer to put on top. So DMAS 16. So it's going to place it on top of my photo. So then it already gives you the boxes to free transform it. So, I could change the opacity on it so it's clear a little bit. And then it's going to ask you to rasterize it, hit OK. And then just go Edit and free transform, get those boxes back. So then you can still size it, you know, the way you want. I'm gonna have to crop this, but just kind of showing it quickly. So I'm gonna hit the check on my free transform. And so then it doesn't let you attach it. So what I would do is let's try the screen blending mode. There we go. So the screen one's working because it's on a white background. If it was on a black background, I'd use the multiply, but because it's on white, I would use the screen. And so now it's just staying. No. Make sure I'm on my layer. I'm just gonna zoom in. There we go. So then I can kind of see how it's blending. I can still use the move tool, move this layer around if I need to. I could add a layer mask to it, you know, with a brush set to black. I'm just gonna make it lower my hardness, bring my flow down, you know, and then I can kind of lightly paint off those areas on her face if I wanted to. So same sort of thing. It's just a little clunkier in Photopea, but you can still get some similar results. And then obviously, you know, I'd crop this. Like so. Bring this down. Bring this up. Okay. And now it's one more time, but there you go. And then when you output, just go File, Save as PSD, just save it with those layers so you can keep working on it. Once you're finished, then you go Layer, down to Flatten Image, and then export it, export as JPEG. And then just make sure your quality is good, hit Save, and then it'll save out your JPEG. So, cool. All right, I'm gonna stop recording.